Hey, Archie, have you heard about Apple's newest product, the ibond?
I'm not sure that's an Apple product. I'm Archie Hoxton,
And I'm Rob Hoxton.
and this is Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. Welcome back to the Last Paycheck Podcast. We're your hosts, Archie Hoxton and Rob Hoxton. And today we're going to talk about ibonds. Are they still attractive? You know, a couple years ago, about, I guess, a year and a half ago, ibonds were all over the news. People were kind of going crazy over them and running, trying to put the money as much as they were allowed to put into them.
Which isn't
and racing
much.
them. Yeah, it's not much.
Mm-hmm.
Because of attractive interest rates. However, things have changed. We're in a very different environment now. And so the question is, are they still attractive investments? So I think maybe we start just kind
I
of
can't stand them.
No.
I really just can't stand them. They're such a pain. And you can't plan with them because the interest rates change as the inflation rate changes. But let's talk about how they work.
Yeah. So what are ibonds? Ibonds they're government bonds. They're issued by, you can get them right through Treasury Direct, which is the U.S. Treasury's website.
So they're savings bonds, not Treasury securities.
Right.
They're not marketable.
Right.
So you can't sell them in the secondary market.
Right.
Yeah.
You buy them directly from Treasury Direct on the website. And they're held there with Treasury Direct. And so you've got a couple of key things about ibonds that you need to know. One is that you can only buy, as an individual, up to $10,000 worth of ibonds.
So maximum 10,000 per social security number.
Yeah.
Minimum is 25 or 50, I think, something like that, small. Yep.
And generally, you can keep it for 20 years, or you can also extend it for an additional 10, so for a total of 30 years, which is typical with government savings bonds. So what's interesting about ibonds is that they were, the name ibond, that it comes from, it's inflation, right? So they were developed as a way for Americans to protect their savings against inflation and the eroding effect on their purchasing power.
So ibonds weren't originally issued by Apple?
No.
Like they came out with the iPhone and they came out with ibonds?
No.
No, okay. Just checking.
Contrary to popular myth. Yeah. So they have two features for interest. The first is a fixed interest rate. So when the government offers new ibonds for purchase, they do this every 6 months, and they set a fixed interest rate. So if you buy them in that 6-month period, you get that fixed interest rate for the life of the bond.
It's usually pretty low.
It's low, right? Because
like 0.5% or something.
Yeah, and it varies. It depends on the interest rate environment at the time. Now, the flip side is the variable interest rate, which is based on inflation. So every 6 months, right? These things work in kind of 6-month cycles.
May and November, right?
Yep. So 6 months. Let's say you buy an ibond. It has a fixed rate of 1%, and let's say the variable rate is 2%, and they've calculated that based on the inflation data. Together, that's 3, right? Now,
to be specific, it's the seasonally adjusted consumer price index for urban dwellers.
Right. To be very specific. So every 6 months, they change that variable interest rate, right? So they update it based on those inflation numbers. So what was interesting about these, when these got really popular in 2022, for a while, they had been issued at a 0% fixed rate. In fact, and we can put this chart in the description. This is a chart of interest rates going back for ibonds going back to 1998. It's provided by Treasury Direct. Since 2020, second half of 2020, these kinds of bonds were issued at a 0% fixed rate. And the only interest you got was the variable rate, which was based on inflation, which at that time was around a little over 1%. So fast forward, they're issuing them 0% fixed rate, and inflation starts to get out of control.
Yeah, it got up over 9% in 2021 summer. Yeah.
So say, for example, in November of 2021, you bought an ibond. You would be earning 7.12%. All of that would be from the variable rate because you had a 0% fixed rate. 6 months later, inflation's even higher, and this was May of 2022, they're offering the bond, they upped the interest rate to 9.62%. This is what everybody was talking about when they're like, oh, wow, these things look awesome, 9.6%, right? But there are catches with these kinds of bonds, right? Catch number one is that 6 months later, inflation came down and you're now earning 6.48%, which is still attractive for that time period. 6 months later, 3.38%. And so it just keeps coming down further and further and further. And you don't have the fixed rate on the bonds issued in that time frame to act as a kind of a floor.
Here's one of the things I don't like about them, Archie, is that, so let's say you decided to, when inflation was over 9%, that you wanted to buy your ibonds, and you and your spouse went out and got the maximum, which is $10,000 each, by going to treasurydirect.gov, and that variable interest rate was really attractive.
Yeah,
it was. That was higher than anything you could get in CDs or even traditional Treasury securities. But now it's much lower, and it's below what would be considered a competitive rate. And so let's say you decide you want to sell it. Well, you can sell it. If you sell it in the first 5 years that you own it, you forfeit the last 3 months worth of interest. It effectively is an interest penalty. And once you get past 5 years, you don't have that. But it really is, I don't know, I just don't like them.
Right. And to be clear, by sell it, we mean you're redeeming it with Treasury. Not because one of the other drawbacks, again, is that it's not marketable. You can't go sell it like you can a Treasury or a brokered CD or a bond.
Yeah, you can't put it in your brokerage account. It's a
savings vehicle, really. Yeah. So that is one of the major drawbacks. And so, like, say inflation got down to 1%, right? And maybe interest rates were still hovering a little higher than that, and you could still get a better bond or a better CD of comparable, with FDIC insurance, mm-hmm. or full faith and credit of the U.S. government. It just wouldn't be an attractive option.
Here's a scenario that would have been very feasible, or you could imagine this happening maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or after the credit crisis of 2008 and 9. We had little patches along the way where we had periods of deflation, right? You had governments issuing sovereign debt, and essentially they had negative yields. So it was like paying the government to hold your money. Terrible situation. With ibonds, you'll never have a negative yield on them.
Right.
That is nice. The worst that they would pay you is nothing.
Right.
To hold your money. So,
right.
But in most cases, you would expect to have some income, and there's some interesting tax features about these these instruments, which we should probably touch on if that's all right.
Speak to
So the income that you receive for owning an ibond is subject to federal tax, but not state and local.
Yep.
You can either choose to pay taxes as the interest is earned on an accrual basis, or you can do it on a cash basis. And if you do it on a cash basis, it means that when you redeem the ibond, you receive the principal of the ibond plus the interest that is accumulated, and you would pay taxes all at that time.
Right.
So the interesting thing about the accrual basis, it works a little bit like a zero coupon bond in a taxable account. You actually pay taxes on interest that you don't actually receive yet.
Right.
So you got to dig into your pocket. You can't pay it out of the interest. It is nice, though, that because they accrue interest, you're actually earning interest on interest you've already earned. So you do get that compounding effect, which is nice. So that is a positive feature.
Yeah, there are definitely positive features. And if you happen to buy one of these in like the late 90s, those actually were pretty attractive. And when you look at the fixed rate at about mid threes, 3.5 roughly, that's where the fixed rates were. And then the variable rate based on inflation at times put you in the double digits for your combined interest rate with the fixed and variable together. You got into the double digits in 2022 and high single digits at several times in the past. So there were times where it was very attractive, and having that is a great place to have your savings, especially through the 2010s where we really didn't see attractive interest rates or savings rates anywhere.
You know, this is not the topic of this show, but there are other inflation-protected securities, like TIPS, Treasury Inflation-Protected Securities, which have some benefits when you're in a changing inflationary environment. And maybe that could be the topic for another show.
Right.
They are very different than what we're talking about here with these types of savings bonds. Think double E bonds, but with an adjustable interest rate based on the inflation rate, right? So, and if you want to drive your financial advisor really crazy, walk into their office with a big stack of those orange double E bonds that somebody gave you when you were a kid 30 years ago and ask them if they can help redeem them.
Yeah.
You used to be able to just walk into your local bank and they could help you with that. Not anymore.
Some still do. I did.
Were you able to?
Yep. You gave me some double E savings bonds when I was a kid, and I cashed them a few years ago at a bank.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to open the bank account with them.
I did that mostly to be annoying, right?
Yeah. Well, that was a success. But they actually, I've earned some good interest on them, and it had been 30 years or so, so they had stopped accruing interest, so it was time to redeem them. But
I still have some that I was given when I was an infant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So maybe since you know how to do it, I can give mine to you to go redeem for me. You think?
Give me a cut of the interest and then we're talking.
All right. Okay, good deal.
Well, anyway, so if you were someone who bought ibonds, back when there was sort of the mini ibond craze, and you're trying to figure out whether or not it's worth holding on to them, it's hard to say exactly in your scenario, but take a look, figure out what fixed rate are you earning. If you bought it in the last few years, it may well be zero. And consider what will happen if inflation continues to decline. You'll earn less and less, and then is it worth just taking a 3 month of interest penalty, or would you rather just ride out till 5 years?
And don't forget you will have a tax bill when you do that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, if this is, we hope that this has been helpful to you. If you have questions, we're available. Leave us a comment and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to see what we can do as far as answering any questions you might have, and who knows, it might even become an episode later if it's got some some popularity. So, yeah, like I said, leave us a comment, give us a like, subscribe, share with your family and friends, and we'll see you next time. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.